And when I was talking a little while ago about the increasing bread and oil prices in South Africa and other foodstuff, basic necessities, due to the war or the invasion by Russia into the Ukraine, I also mentioned the dire situation that millions of Somalis are facing. And I kind of wonder what sort of aid the Somalians are going to get from the rest of the world, knowing that there's going to be a huge impact in the rest of the world with these escalating fuel and food prices. But that's not to take away from the seriousness of the situation in Somalia. We understand that millions of Somalis are in need of assistance as a result of the country's worst drought in 4 decades. Abdulkadir Omar, a citizen based in Somalia, is talking to us about this very dire situation. Salaam alaikum, brother. Welcome to the program.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you so much. This is Abdulkadir Hikam. Yeah.
Yeah, our heart goes out to the people of Somalia. I can't even begin to imagine when I look at all of the pictures of the starving people and the possibility that malnutrition has already started as far as the children are concerned. I can't even imagine how dire that situation is. Um, the reason that Somalia finds itself in this predicament is because, obviously, of the ongoing drought over the past few years. Brother?
Yes, I cannot hear you well. I don't know why.
Okay, we understand that it hasn't rained for the past 2 years. We understand that crops have failed, that animals have died or are dying in huge numbers. And this has created a serious problem in Somalia. Have you had any aid from the rest of the world? How are you coping currently?
Uh, Thank you so much. Exactly as you said, the rain failure in the last 2 years, particularly the last year, 2021, was extremely below the average. And it was very dry, and it continues until today to be dry. And as a result, the malnutrition of both people and animals higher levels. And if you go through, I'm now in one of the regions of the country. I came from Mogadishu 4 days ago, and if you see the area, you will get really disappointed, and everything become smoky, and there's no vegetation. People are concentrated in specific water points that are also overused and overstretched, and animals are dying for the couple of last few months, and human beings are also suffering. And it's not only Somalia, also the other parts of Somali inhabited areas in the Horn of Africa, like in Ethiopia and in Kenya. This drought is beyond the geography of Somalia, and it goes into different countries, Ethiopia particularly, and Kenya.
Due to the drought, the severe drought in that country, people are being displaced, obviously, because they move from village to village or from area to area to try and find food and some form of sustenance for their families. Added to that issue, the displacement issue, losing of crops and livestock, we understand that certain areas are also in the grip of a measles pandemic. How is that furthering further adding to the troubles of Somalia? Okay, I think we have lost our guest there, and that is Brother Abdulkadir Omar. Can you hear me, brother? Okay, let's try and reconnect with him. Whilst I was talking to Abdulkadir Omar, one thing popped into my mind, and that is the issue around COVID. And we do know that in north of our borders, very especially like countries that he has mentioned, Ethiopia, Somalia, etc., they are in the grip of a drought. And I even wonder if they apply their minds to something like COVID, where they have other issues like measles, malaria. We know that malaria is a waterborne disease, and in a drought-stricken area, the meager water resources they have obviously will be contaminated as well. And I should imagine in a situation like this that COVID is not even on their agenda. The only thing on their agenda is to try and save their children, get proper health care. We're not even sure what the health care situation looks like in that part of the world, and try and put some bread on the table. So I understand that brother Abdul Qadir Umar is back online. Salaam alaikum to you, brother. Abdul
Alaikum
Qadir?
salam wa rahmatullah. Abdul Fattah Hikam speaking. Sister.
Okay. I spoke about the displacement of people. They're having to leave their land, their grazing land, for the animals and for their crops. They're having to leave. Having to abandon their homes and migrate to other areas with a promise of food and healthcare facilities. What is that looking like? Knowing that certain areas have an outbreak of measles as well.
Thank you so much. The level of shortage of water and pasture is beyond the imagination, and people are concentrated in very limited available sources of water. And sometimes people cross the borders, particularly from Ethiopia to Somalia, and also from Kenya to Somalia, and from on the other side, from Somalia to deep inside Somali region of Ethiopia. There are efforts to aid them. The Somali Prime Minister established a constituted relief and emergency committee, and also there are UN agencies and other NGOs, and also the Somali diaspora and business people. But this is very, very limited, and it's much less than what's needed, because there are millions of people who depend on livestock, and who depend on pasture, and who depend on water rainfalls. Even the rivers, there are two rivers in the country, and the two rivers even are getting the water getting better and less by the day. So this is really one of the hardest seasons that Somali people experience. And also there are two times where the country faces rain. That's the Gu starts from April to June, and also Dair starts from October to November. So it seems Allah may bring rain, but from the past experience, in the last 2 years, they were much below the expectation, and we expect from Allah to bring rain now, in particularly at the end of April, and some forecasts say they will be even below the average. But we hope from Allah to bring rain.
Inshallah, Ameen. We do hope and pray fervently that you get the much needed rain, that it will materialize. And I know that you are hoping and praying that it happens, because we do understand right now as we speak, if the rains do not come, 1.4 million children under the age of 5 will be acutely malnourished by the end of the year. We also know, as you have just said, that the United Nations World Food Programme and other organizations are assisting, but it is not enough because the need is so huge. How is it that the authorities manage to distribute the food? Is there a good program in place to try and distribute it as equally as possible?
Thank you so much. There are some efforts, and these efforts sometimes are crushed on the reality on the ground. For example, the accessibility is a very big issue here. The roads, reaching the place that most of the needy people are living is really a challenge. And also the security. The security is a real challenge, particularly there are different frontline and front lines. And the NGOs or the government cannot intervene. And the accessibility in general is a big challenge. The amount of relief that's required is much more what's available, and it's much more than beyond. I think even 1.5 million children will be much less than. I think the actual number, because of this is really from corner to corner in the country, and it seems particularly the rural areas, those who are dependent on puffs and rain, are the one that's most hit. Every town there are thousands, if not tens of thousands of IDPs, internally displaced people. If you talk to the communities, they will tell you that there are other people who migrate from other places that are on the areas, particularly on around the scarce unlimited sources of water, which become under huge pressure that they themselves, we don't know how long they can sustain. This is also added to the higher prices of oil, particularly the oils that work with the machinists and with the modern systems. So it seems things are quite tough here in this part of the Horn of Africa. Hello.
Agencies come to your aid. But having said that, I'm also wondering, it seems there's a huge amount of people that are vying for limited resources of water. Also, the displaced people, the migration of people across the region seeking water and food, obviously, and seeking health services. That must create quite a challenging dynamic for the people there. How do they cope? Uh, you know, there must be disputes breaking out between the different villages and clans for the ownership of these very, very scarce resources. What does that scenario look like?
Thank you so much. Sometimes the small limited available sources of water and pasture becomes a source of conflict, where the migrants or the IDPs and those who are all there sometimes conflict over these limited resources. So, but people have their own climate mechanisms to solve such clashes or such conflicts. They have their own linkages and they have own their relationships and the ways of migrating when such droughts or naturally induced climate change disasters happen. So they have their own ways of traveling, going and knowing where is where something can be available or where the tough times they can get something. But now I think it's much more beyond their capacity and their imagination. It becomes now like there's no place better than much than the other place. So I don't know how things will go. We will progress in April, particularly the end of April, maybe towards the end of April and May. But this is the whole country, and this is something that people didn't experience for many decades. And it's coupled with the lack of security in the country, and also maybe many other international NGOs are busy with other parts of the globe, particularly Ukraine, maybe, and other places.
So on top of the very dire and serious situation in the country regarding the drought, scarcity of food and water, and these conflicts conflicts between people, the indigenous people, and people who've been displaced. You're having to contend with all of that and the measles epidemic. How is the health services coping with all of this?
Sister, thank you. You cannot talk about health at a time where people are dying for something to put in their mouth. Health becomes sometimes a secondary issue to think of. Now people will tell you we need water, we need something to put in the mouth. Someone will tell you I used to have 500 cattle, and now maybe I'm remained with 20, and they are on their way also to die. And someone was having, for example, 500 goats, and now today he's left with nothing. With his children sitting there, or they migrate from there. Sometimes when people migrate from one point to another, sometimes they die on the road. So it looks something that healthy and health and other things become now unthinkable. It's become a luxury for them now. Something they need something to put their mouth, water to drink, and
I brought up the issue of health because
the area is in some areas are reported, and people are if there's a malnutrition for the children and for the elderly and for everybody, for women, and the health impact of that.
I raised that issue because I imagined that health services probably is only functional in the towns or the cities and non-existent in the rural areas. And I just wondered how people, because there is an outbreak of measles and children are dying because of the measles and the malnutrition, and I just wondered how people are coping. But it obviously is non-existent in those areas. But having said that, Brother Abdulkadir, how do you think that the whole issue is this possibly a discussion to be had with those people, who own a flock and have land, that they need to be having discussions around climate change, or for now, is it out of their minds because of the dire situation in Somalia? Okay. We seem to have lost Abdulkadir, but I do think that he's given us a very clear picture. Are you there, Abdulkadir?
Yes.
Did you hear my question regarding climate change?
No.
Okay, I'm wondering, you know, all around the globe, people are talking about climate change and also suggesting that the situation that we find ourselves in today with droughts, etc., is directly due to climate change. Is Somalia and other countries or countries in the in North Africa engaging with climate change activists to make a difference to that region so that you never or hopefully don't see droughts, on this scale again in the future?
Can you repeat the question? Because the hearing is not that well.
Okay, let's end it there. The line is degrading as we're talking. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you indeed for your time. Ongoing du'as for the situation to change and that Allah sends rain to your part of the world, inshallah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
9:25 news and views right here on Salam Media.
Services only at Sapphire Global. You'll find